Good evening, everyone. Good evening and welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Kali Namdar, Resilience Programs and School-Based Services Director at OHEL. Thank you so much for joining us. We are thrilled to have you here for what promises to be an insightful and empowering and maybe even a laugh out loud conversation as we engage with an incredible panel this evening. Both panelists will share their expertise and lived experience from the perspective of both treating and parenting children with ADHD. We all hear the talk about parenting being like a journey, right? An adventure full of surprises. But parenting a child with ADHD, that's more like signing up for a roller coaster, not realizing it's a rocket launch. It's fast, it's furious, and it's unpredictable. Tonight's panelists have been there. They're as dynamic and vibrant as the kids we love. They've got stories, strategies, and most importantly, a deep and nuanced understanding of what it's like to walk in your shoes. Our program tonight is geared not to talk at you, but to connect with you. We know that there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all approach. Throughout the program, you're welcome to drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to respond to your questions at the end. And if you have a particular panelist you'd like to address your question to, please just indicate that. Before I introduce our panelists, I just want to make you aware of the upcoming events in the series. Tonight's webinar is the third webinar in our In It Together series, which is really here to help parents navigate the mental health challenges our children are facing today. We're thankful to UJA New York for sponsoring the series and our school partners who helped us share this resource with the community. I also want to thank Adiva Pomerantz, our program manager, who's on tonight, for her assistance in coordinating the series. Over the next 2 weeks, parents will have an exclusive opportunity to schedule a confidential consultation. We're calling this an Ask the Expert session, where they can receive parenting support from Dr. Nachi Felt over Zoom on Monday, December 23rd and Monday, December 30th. And we're going to be sending you an email after this webinar with that information. Sessions will be private and 15 minutes long. And just important to note that information provided in the sessions is for educational purposes only and doesn't constitute therapy or the establishment of a therapeutic relationship. After this webinar, we're going to be sending you a link to a survey. If you could please complete it, it really helps us be of better service to the community. So please complete the survey. And then after this webinar, we'll be hosting another webinar in February with the title, The Things I Wish My Parents Knew, Parenting Today's Teenagers, with an incredible lineup, Dr. Debbie Ackerman, Dr. Shalom Angerbaum, and Razel Yaish. Let me introduce our panelists for tonight. First, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Felt, and then we'll be hearing from Lisa Shinehouse, who will share her perspective on parenting a child with ADHD. Dr. Nachi Felt, or Michael Felt, how he is known in some other places, PhD, is an ADHD and executive functioning specialist who has lectured at Yale University School of Medicine and is a professor at Columbia University, where he teaches psychopathology and co-directs the Cognition and Neuroscience Research Lab. He's renowned for his revolutionary cycles of clarity technique, which has empowered hundreds of people to create their own clarity, confidence, and control. And Dr. Felt loves nothing more than helping his fellow ADHDers. He's always looking to share how to create ADHD success with humor and refreshing honesty. And now Lisa Shinehouse, my colleague at OHEL. Lisa is the Director of Community Programs at OHEL, where she's responsible for a variety of the organization's day and community-based programs to support and rehabilitate individuals with mental health conditions and developmental disabilities. Every day, Lisa aims to empower individuals with disabilities to achieve their goals. Her responsibilities at OHEL include supervising local area coordinators, managers, clinical staff, to ensure that individuals with disabilities are receiving quality care and support. As a mom to a child with ADHD, Lisa often provides her perspective and best practices to media publications like the Jewish Press and writes a blog for Psychology Today. Before joining OHEL, Lisa worked at Touro College as an academic advisor and spent 15 years as an adjunct professor with the school psychology department, where she earned her BA in psychology and a master's in school psychology. And now we are going to turn it over to Dr. Nachi Felt.
Thank you so much, Dr. Namdar. It's really great to be here. I have a special place in my heart for OL. This is the organization that helped me break out into the ADHD world. So good to be here. Thank you, Mrs. Shinehouse and Adiva, for pulling this together and getting me here with all of my ADHD complications in the way. I'm going to share my slides now. And we're going to be talking about navigating ADHD from preschool through post-school. It's going to be everything in between. I kept this as ADHD friendly as I could. I have limited this to only 5 slides. It's going to have a common theme throughout it. We're just going to be looking through 3 things, which is what you need to know, what's helpful to feel, and what's helpful to do. Afterwards, at the end, we're going to do what's helpful to review, just so we could sum it up. And for those of you who missed something or spaced out, like I probably will do, then we'll just pull it all together again at the end. And then finally, I'll make space for the question. So this is where we start with what's helpful to know. A lot of times we think of ADHD as like, oh, it's an attention issue, it's an impulsivity issue, it's a can't behave issue, it's a spaced out issue. It's super helpful for me to see ADHD through this lens. This is from Dr. Russell Barkley. Russell Barkley has ADHD himself, so I guess he's got some street cred. And he is one of the first psychologists to really dive into the research into the brain of ADHD and what's going on inside there. There's a lot, but one of the things that he brings out is this point, which I think gives such a powerful insight to ADHD. So in a very thick, big book called ADHD and the Nature of Self-Control, which kind of comes down to the point of it, he says this point, which is that ADHD is a behavioral inhibition, meaning not able to do an activity or an action or a feeling that's caused by a lack of governance over time, right? Fancy words for not being able to control time, not feeling time the same way that everyone else does. Then he uses this great phrase, which is being unable to cleave thought to action. I love that because it really explains the idea of like running out to go get milk from the store and then coming back without milk. I've probably bought a ton of other things besides for milk, but what happened there? And this really explains it. It's not being able to cleave thought to action. I knew I had the thought. I just didn't apply it or connect it to action. And he continues and he says, right, it's knowledge to and from performance, right? Even though we know what to do, a lot of times when you ask a kid with ADHD, like, why do you do that, right? Well, most of the times they say, I don't know. But like often we do know what we were supposed to do. We do know what we did wrong, right? It's about not knowing it when I needed to know it. It really comes down to that. It's not knowing what I needed to know when I need to know it. So even though I know I'm supposed to pay attention, I know I'm supposed to calm down, I know I'm not supposed to hit, I know I'm not supposed to get into a fight, I know that I'm supposed to just be quiet and let the teacher finish talking, right? I know that, but it's not being able to feel it in the here and now. That is the key core problem inside the brain of an ADHD person. It's just so integral to the way our brain is working. This idea of not being able to feel time, not being able to control time, and not being able to take action with the thoughts and knowledge that we already know. Once we recognize that it's really a time issue, it's a timing problem, this allows us to kind of take a deep breath and be like, okay. So it's not that they're lazy, dumb, stupid, right? It's all that. It's not. It's really a simple thing. It's about feeling time in the moment, being able to feel what we need to know when we need to know it. So what it ends up coming out is that we're looking at a brain that's different. It's not seeing things the same way that every other brain is. It's not feeling things the same way that every other brain is. And therefore, it's having very different experiences. So for instance, right, like that idea of having a kid who will come into a classroom, right, sit down with everyone else and have the same book as, well, that's already successful, that they had the same book as everyone else, right? And they opened up to the same page, again, success, to the same page as everyone else. they're still living a very different experience, because on that page, just like someone who would be dyslexic, or so just like someone who couldn't read this language, they're looking at something different than everyone else is. They're looking at a bunch of annoying little words. They're just really only noticing the pictures if they're interesting enough, right? Or whatever else is going on around them, but it's not the same experience. They know they're supposed to look inside their book. They know they're supposed to read it and follow the place, right? But they're just not feeling that same feeling. So it's almost like we're expecting them to do the things that people who have those feelings would do, but they're not having that feeling. So it's kind of hard for them to then do those things that people who had those feelings would have done. So at its core, you're looking at just someone who's living differently than everyone else. It's a different experience for this brain. My brain experiences the world differently than someone who doesn't have a brain like mine, right? Just like everyone here, right, has their own unique brain. We know the famous Gemara, Kashem She'ein, Shnei Partzufin, Doman Zulazu, the same way that people's faces are not the same, right? We say the same thing about their deos, about their brain and how they understand the world. It's just so unique and so different, especially when it's neurodivergent, when there's something else happening inside there that's making their feelings different. So that's the first most important rule that I think that all of us should know. It's kind of like, these are like the three expectations that will allow us to kind of lead a much more calm, happier, more positive experience, is just recognizing this, right? Starting off the bat, just recognizing that my child or the child that's in my class has a different brain. And because they have a different brain, they're going to have different feelings. And if they're feeling different, they're also having a different experience. That alone is so empowering, and it's something that allows us, it liberates us to the space to be able to kind of attend to that different brain, to attend to the different feelings, and therefore to alter, maybe even help the different experience. The second expectation, or I guess you could call it rule, would be that kids do the best they can. This is not my line, although I wish it was. It's from Ross Greene. Ross Greene is the author of The Explosive Child, I think, Kids in School. He has a whole bunch of amazing books that focus just on kids who are like super, super tough and have a really hard time in school or at home. And he has this basic premise that is a theme throughout all of his books and throughout all of his work, which is that kids do the best they can. When we're not mad at them, we could take a step back and think like, oh yeah, they're just yummy, delicious kiddos. They're really just trying to be happy and live a life that's happy and positive and filled with joy. That's really all they want. No one's here to bedafka hurt someone or to bedafka tick you off or bother the parents, right? They're not trying to get us. They're really doing the best they can. Sometimes they get stuck. And that's our job, right? That's the third expectation, which is now that's where they need our help to get them from point A to point B, or sometimes from point A to point C to point D to point E to F, right? Sometimes if they're not able to get themselves out of their situation, that's where we come in. We're the adult. We have that vision. We have the gift of experience. And so that's what allows us to kind of be there for them. And that's really our responsibility. As the adult in the room, we're the ones with the experience and the wisdom to really help out these yummy, yummy kiddos. So that's really it, right? Just three, those are just the only three things you need to know, right? Is that different brains mean that they're going to have different experiences. They're not seeing the world the same way we are sometimes. That's always something that we should be curious about. Like, hey, what's going on inside your brain? Like, what happened there, right? Because until we know what happened, how could we really help them? So that's number one, is recognizing that it's a different brain. The second thing is just kind of allowing ourselves and allowing them the space to recognize that kids do the best they can. I don't have to be the one to say, have a dam lekafskos, that's the Torah already. But just this idea of recognizing they really do, they just want to be good. No one wants to be the bad kid. No one wants their mommy to be mad at them. No one wants daddy to be disappointed. No one. They're really just doing the best they can. And then finally, this is where it comes in for us. Like, okay, So why is my kid tantruming everywhere, right? So like you call that the best? Well, first of all, it could be, yeah, that right now is the best they can with their situation. So that means they clearly don't have the skills to not be tantruming right now. So that's where we come in to help them go through those skills, to develop it, to work it through. It's like any job that we've learned, right? Who here just picked up a golf stick and knew how to golf? I still don't. There's like some weird way you have to hold it with your finger and like cover your thumb. I have no idea how to do that. Someone has had to teach me how to hit a golf ball, right? Just like someone had to teach us to ride a bike, right? We have a skill, we know how to move our feet, but we didn't necessarily know how to pedal while also balancing ourselves, right? So it's just the same way that we needed someone to help scaffold our skills, they need someone to help scaffold their skills, right? And this is like not limited to learning how to ride a bike. It's the same thing applies for emotional skills, how to regulate ourselves, right? Emotional regulation is a skill, just like bike riding. It's something that needs practice, it needs direction, and it needs even more practice. So that's it. Just 3 things to know, right? Not that bad. For all of you here who also have ADHD, really like pretty manageable, right? All right, so now we're ready to move on to feelings. So what's helpful to feel? So what's helpful to feel is number one, calming clarity, right? Just like that deep breath of like, okay, I could like, let me just kind of take a second to just breathe, to like calm myself down. Because when I'm losing it, no one's going to be helped, right? So that's the first step, is regulating ourselves so that you can regulate others, right? The famous advice that we see on all those annoying airplane videos, first help yourself before you help the child next to you. It applies to parenting. It's the same thing, right? Allowing ourselves to first calm ourselves so that then we could calm others. In this one, I have a very helpful tip to help us calm, which I stole from my mother-in-law. Yes, that happened, and I'm saying it in public. My mother-in-law has this amazing skill that she tries to teach parents. She runs an early childhood center in Eric Sisseral, and she has this thing called zooming out, right? Where when you take a step back and you zoom out and you think, all right, let me see the big picture, right? So my kid took flour and flung it all over the kitchen and is now pouring milk off of the counter. Yeah, that stinks. And it will stink if we don't clean it, right? That's sticky, that's gross, that's nasty. Let me zoom out. Is my kid a monster? Okay, debatable, right? But is my kid really, is this like a juvenile delinquent? Does spilling milk and flour all over, is that really going to be the end of the world? No. Already that's calm, right? It's about recognizing that, okay, this is a mess. I've cleaned up messes before. It's not so crazy, right? It's just a mess. It's another mess in our lives. We're probably going to have another one again. So zooming out to recognize the big picture is that the world's not coming to an end. My kid's not horrible, right? This is something I could probably manage. So zooming out allows us to do something really powerful, not only to calm ourselves down to see the bigger picture, but it also allows us to zoom back in on what we need to do to help this child, right? In this case, it could be buying a lock for our cabinet, but it could also be that, all right, so now what's happening here? What does this child need in this moment? What can I do? Let's zoom in on what needs to happen. Already now we've moved ourselves out from like the fight, flight, or freeze or scream and yell part of our brain to the problem solving. Okay, what needs to happen? Because yelling, why did you do that? Not going to help, right? We all know that. That's not going to help. But now if we could zoom in, we could focus on, okay, what needs to happen next? And this is where we come to the next step, which is collaborative candor, which is just being very open and honest and collaborative. All right, folks, right? There's a big mess in this kitchen. How are we going to clean it? So it really only comes from us having that clarity and that calm. If we're not calm and we're nasty and fuming mad, right? It's kind of hard to have this collaborative candor, and it's very hard for us to be in a space where we could be the mature adult who's able to tell ourselves that this is tough, but I am tougher, right? Or even something as simple as, I got this. I went through grade school. I got through high school, right? With all the cliques and drama. And I even went through seminary and got married. And I dealt with a man for a really long time and all of his socks everywhere. I'm pretty sure I could handle this mess too. Right? I got this. And then obviously, right? So now what can we do? Right? Instead of just like, right? What can we do? What is there to do? All right, we could start cleaning up. We could start moving forward. We could start doing this together. So collaborative candor is in a way this like this like transparent openness. All right, okay, how are we going to deal with this? The coolest part about this is not only does it help us get the kitchen clean, but it also involves our children. It also creates this environment and a culture at home of like practical, let's just do this. Let's get stuff done together. Instead of just whining and getting nuts and losing ourselves, we're now coming after the calming clarity, and we're allowing ourselves to focus on problem solving. And then finally, the last one, which is for when it gets way worse than just like milk and flour all over our kitchen, is courage and care. Yeah, that one's a hard one. Sometimes setting boundaries with our kids is tough. I'm the one who struggles with that in our house. So it's tough. Like setting boundaries, like we don't want the fight in the moment. It could be tough. It is hard. Um, and sometimes we need courage to do that. Sometimes we need courage to fight for this child. Sometimes we need courage to fight with this child. Um, Sometimes we just need courage to fight. That's it. We just need courage. It's hard. It's hard to set boundaries. It's hard to calm ourselves down. It's hard to like zoom out and see this crazy mess of a house that you just cleaned 12 minutes ago and to not lose it and to not go crazy and to not even feel blame like towards, again, I'm not saying that we should let them get off of this, right? This is, remember, step 2 is what could we do about this? How can we fix this, right? But it's the idea of recognizing that I want to take control over myself and I want to attend to what's happening here because that's what's best for me and that's what's best for my child. When we care about something, we're willing to invest in it, right? We're willing to do things that are tough and take time. It's like anything else in life, and there's probably nothing more valuable in our lives than our kids. So it's really about harnessing that love, the warmth, the care of I love this kid and I want to make this work. I want to help this child move through whatever they're going through or clean up this mess or learn independence or learn how to emotionally regulate. And I'm going to develop that courage to get myself to do that, to push for those boundaries, to push for those accommodations at school, to fight for my child to be able to get what they need, to find the right therapist, to do my homework and research on whatever medication or supplements could be helpful. I'm going to fight for this kid, even if it's awkward for me. And even if I don't feel comfortable, let's say, with a treatment option or with a medication option or with a teacher's IEP plan, right? The idea is that because I care, I'm going to fight. I can develop courage. These are 3 really high-end skills. Like this is sophisticated stuff. So it's not like if you're not feeling this right now, that's okay. It takes time. Some of these things, like I know I'm working on all 3 of these even now. And I probably will still be working on them for a while. But it's really trying to get ourselves to feel these feelings so that we could then be the best version of ourselves, which again starts with that calming clarity. I often do just like a deep breath, 3 seconds, like 6 seconds in, and then, well, I was right the first time. 3 seconds in through my nose, 6 seconds out through my mouth. In my family, we call it a woosah, and even my 2-year-old does it. That's right, Jack. Keep it up. And all of my kiddos, they've learned that because they see daddy doing it. Like sometimes it's hard for me. I have ADHD. It's very hard for me to like regulate my feelings. And sometimes I need to like manually calm myself down. But it's only then that I can then take my brain from that amygdala, fight, flight, or yell and scream place to be a problem solver, which is what my kids need me to be. They're relying on me to help get them through this difficult situation because clearly they can't. And if we're not relying on me, who are we relying on? Them? So that's the next part, which is at some point, the reliance has to be 2 ways. We do need to kind of like develop some sort of collaboration so that they could learn to be independent. We can't be doing it always forever. Like, we're not here to clean up their mess when they're 26. That's not what we're here to do. So at some point, we do need to help them rely on themselves. And so that's the collaborative candor, which is, okay, how can we work together? It's this like feeling of not like I'm here to fix you. It's not here to control you. I'm not here to make you fix your mistake because I want to punish you. It's because this is a mistake that needs to be fixed. It's almost like it allows us to work on that first step, right? From the what do you know, right? That they're different brains and that they're doing the best they can, to almost see them in that more realistic light of like they're really just good, sweet kids who didn't know how to work through that mistake or that problem or that crisis. And when we step away from like assuming malicious intent, it frees us up to do this, to be more calm, to zoom out and realize, yeah, my kid's not here to make my life a terrible misery. That's not really what they're here for. So like zooming out to recognize like this is not malicious. They're not here. It's not on purpose. This is just a kid who doesn't know how not to do this. And it's my job, right? Going back to that third thing, to scaffold their skills, right? To do this collaborative candor, to really just be open and honest with them. And sometimes being honest with them will take courage. It will really take courage to be like, hey, talking to me while I'm in the middle of speaking to my husband is just not appropriate, right? You can't just butt into people's conversations. Oh, but how's it going to make my kid feel? I don't know, but your kid needs to know these social skills. We need to teach them these social skills. If they don't have it, we need to teach it. That's our job. All right, so we did what we need to know. We already have what is helpful to feel. So now let's get to what to do. The moment we've all been waiting for. So what's helpful to do? All right, great stuff. We love it. Really good, Nachi. Awesome. Now I know what to do. I know what to know. I know what to feel. Just tell me what to do. I just want to know what to do. So this is what you've been waiting for. It's really just going to be 3 points. Not bad at all, right? Pretty simple. Here are the 5 words, the 5 most powerful words in our child's life. There's actually going to be 2 sets of 5 words. There's for when they're younger, right? That preschool thing. And then all the way through like kind of when they're older, like kind of teenage year-y time. The first 5 words, if you're ready to take notes, here we go, is going to be what is in your way? What is in your way? Remember, we already know that kids are trying to do the best they can. So if they're stuck, there's something in their way. What is in your way? When we could help a child identify their obstacles or what's in their way, we can help them work through that. So it's not only is this something that's helpful for us, because now we can finally figure out what the problem is, right? But it's also training their mind to be a problem solver, to recognize that there's something here that's blocking me from being the person I want to be, from doing what I want to do, from feeling what I want to feel. So again, for younger children, those most powerful 5 words are what is in your way. Now, trying that with the teenagers, probably a little bit different. So we have a different set of 5 words. This one I get from my good friend, David Becker. David Becker's 5 words that he uses and he finds super, super like fun and geschmack and helpful is, how did you do that? This is not an angry, how did you do that? It's with a twinkle, a smile. It's how did you do that? The reason why this is such a powerful, helpful word phrase is because it's doing the same thing that other thing was, which is it's really in helping the child look inside themselves, develop that executive function of self-awareness, and see how they did it. When we do that, we're empowering our child to recognize and value their own success, their own strength, their own accomplishment. And it's so much more powerful than, wow, good boy, or that was great. This brings them inside themselves. So for those of you who missed it the first time, it's how did you do that? You could do this, again, both of them I think could be used in both ages and stages. Really, like you're the parent, you're the mechanech, you know the child the best. I put that's totally up to you. Again, you'll see what it is. But the point behind both of them is the same, which is it's allowing us to help this child work through the problem, to help them become a problem solver. When we zoom out in that big picture view, that's really all we want for our kids, right? It's to help them be their own problem solver. I mean, we sure don't want to be doing it forever, right? So like the idea is to help our children become their own problem solver. And this is where we get to the next one. The second one is internal and external organization. What we just spoke about now really helps the child internally organize. But what we could do even more is to kind of, at the younger ages, help label their feelings. Giving names for feelings really helps organize what's happening inside the child, which is very calming, right? Wow, that looks really frustrating, right? That's helping them learn that it's not just mad, sad, glad, right? That there are so many different shades and a million different flavors of feelings. And those names and labels give our kids calm because it allows them to express what's happening. It allows them to understand what's going on inside them. So labeling things as much as we can, again, brings us back to here, right? Number 3, that's our help to scaffold their skills. They don't know those, right? They don't know all the names. But when we give them names, it gives them structure, it gives them security, and it gives them calm. So internal organization means trying to help our children figure out what's going on inside them, right? The idea of giving labels to emotions is just one step, but it's really this principle, which is being an engaged partner with our children's internal, with what's happening inside them. And the next part is external organization. So most of you, I'm sure, already do this. So you can pat yourself on the back. Like simple things, like making sure that shoes are always downstairs next to the door so that you're not running to look for them when you have 3 minutes to get out to the bus, right? So external organization is just such a simple, practical thing that I'm sure so many of you already do. Keep it up. That's awesome, right? This could look like anything from making a set homework time, right? So there's a certain culture in the home that when you get home, this is homework time and there's snack out or fruit or healthy vegetables or whatever is your family culture, or whatever you're into, that, or really whatever works, whatever your kids are into, right? That allows them to have like this organization. So we have, as soon as you get home, there's homework, let's say, again, this is an example, you don't have to do this, right? There's homework, there's food while you're doing homework, there's supper, then there's showers, playtime, whatever, and bed. Right. So like in a way, if you can make it an if this, then that, it makes it so much easier for everyone involved, right? Homework, snack, and food, whatever, is for children doing homework, right? Then supper, because everyone needs food, right? And then if you want to be able to play before or read or do whatever you want to do before bed, I need you to be showered and in PJs. If this, then that. Again, you have to recognize the age and stage. I don't know if trying this with teenagers is the same thing, so you have to do it in a different way, right? So for instance, for them, it would be using collaborative candor to be like, all right, how can we make your life a little bit easier when you get home, right? I know you're going to be starving as soon as you get home. I know you're going to be starving an hour later. I know you're going to be starving 2 hours later. And I know you're going to be starving again at 11 at night. So how can we make this work for you so that you're not constantly like roaming through my fridge and ruining everything? What can we do? See how that's external organization based off of that thing that we already spoke about before, which is collaborative candor. Like, all right, like I'm not mad at you. I recognize you're ravenous, you're a teenager, and you just inhale food. I get it. And what can we do to make this work? And then there are like so many different specific examples. I'm more than happy to like talk about it later if people want to like get into that. But like simple things like having like an expandable key ring. Like you ever seen like with people who walk their dogs, they have that like leash that kind of goes out longer and longer and then comes right back in. You can have one of those inside a backpack that's clipped on to their notebook. So awesome, right? But it's external organization like that makes it so much easier for the kid, right? If they're always forgetting their book and you just have something like that, it's just helpful. It makes their life easier. It's a way to scaffold them. This is not cheating. This is scaffolding. It's helping them until they're ready to do that. Also, it's kind of brilliant and cool. And this is the final one. The ABCs and the rules of engagement. Yes, the rules of engagement. I stole that from combat because sometimes it's kind of like that. So at home, there are rules of engagement. In general, the first rule of engagement is to just try to keep things light and playful. That means you say the same stuff you would have said before, but with a twinkle in your eye, a smile, a smirk, right? Like, hey, Connie, are you supposed to be touching his stuff? Right? Like something like that with a smile, right? Or come on, you know you're not supposed to be burning marshmallows on our stove. That's so funny. Come on. Right? Something like that. Why? Sometimes our brains, like our kids' brains, like they forgot or they thought they could get away with it, or it wasn't particularly super clear that, well, you're not allowed to, like, there's no rule in the house that said you're not allowed to roast marshmallows on our stovetop, right? So they didn't necessarily know or make that step on their own. So just a friendly reminder is a belief in the goodness of my kid, right? But it also allows a space for enjoying them and appreciating them. Come on, how much fun are marshmallows on a fire? Like, that's just awesome. So like having a space for that like yumminess of our kids' experience, right? It means that we don't have to always be a policeman or a policewoman. Like it's not what we're here to do until it is, right? So that's the next rule of engagement, right? So number 1 is keep things just light and playful. So the next one is firm and fair. Sometimes we do have to kind of be a little bit policey, And that's where, again, like if someone's like getting into a fight, not already fighting, that's different, right? Getting into a fight, right? Or if a teenager is like trying to argue with you about having a cell phone or curfew or that kind of stuff. So firm and fair. That again is going to rely very heavily on that collaborative candor of just being open. Like, hey, listen, I'd love for you to stay out all night. I get anxiety and I'm worried that you're going to die. So how can we make me be able to sleep at night and you still be able to have a social life and not be a nerd? Firm and fair, right? This is what needs to happen. I don't need to stay up all night being worried about you. And you also want to be able to have a social life. Let's work it out. Let's figure it out together. Firm and fair, right? For a little kid, right? Let's say telling a little kid, you're not allowed to take someone's stuff without asking. That's it. Firm and fair. The third one, this is like when everything goes a little bit crazy. Do whatever works. Sometimes you just need to grab, right? This is like when they're already fighting, which is where you separate, right? Let's say the children are fighting, right? And like once you're already at that stage, go for it, guys. I get it. I've been there also. It's fine. Like whatever works. But if the more light and playful we could keep things, the less likely it'll escalate into big nasty fights. The more firm and fair that we could do and being collaborative with our kids and kind of working things out together as a team will also prevent those things from happening. Now, it doesn't prevent everything. And when it does, I'm not here to tell you what to do when things are going crazy, because that really just goes back to this calm and clarity. Do whatever you can to calm yourself down so you're not in fight, flight, or yell at my kids mode. That's it. It's really what it comes down to. Is being able to be the adult in the room, to calm ourselves down, and to be regulated enough to do what's best for our child. The ABCs are kind of fun. It's that in every single one of these rules of engagement, there's always going to be affect, right? Recognizing the kind of affect we have, right? Being light and playful means that we want to have a light and fun kind of affect. In firm and fair, it's going to be a little bit more serious. And then obviously when it's all hands on deck, it's whatever it is. Then there's behavior, which is matching our behavior with that of the child, right? If a child's jumping on the couch, they're not allowed to be jumping on. So like a little one, you could jump with them, like you're jumping your body, not on the couch. Don't worry. I don't want you to break your back, right? Just like, wow, this looks really fun, right? We're not allowed to jump on the couch, or right, that's already confrontational. So I'd be like, I know you love jumping, you could jump on this, not on the couch, right? And moving the child, redirecting them, right? The idea is being light and playful, not just screaming at them. And this kind of like matching the behavior sometimes will mean that we should be like kind of like be engaged with the child, come closer to the child. I heard a great like barometer is within 3 feet. Those of us who live in like tiny little houses like me in Queens, it's pretty easy to do, right? If you're living in a much bigger house out of town, first of all, I'm jealous, good for you. You're gonna actually have to do a little bit of work, right? So like yelling at them from the kitchen all the way out to like the playroom downstairs, not the most effective way to do it. I know that sometimes life, it just happens that way, but if you could, to whatever degree you can, to kind of be as close as you can to your child, to show them, hey, I'm here with you, right? The point of matching their behavior is just to show I'm with you. So in whatever way you can, match the behavior just means engaging with your child, being there physically, right? So again, affect, which is the feelings, like the expressions on our face, the mood that we're kind of exuding, and then behavior, right? Which is just like being there with the kid. And then finally, choice. This is great. Again, it's working on the collaborative candor, which is we always ask the kid, put the ball in their court. What can you do to fix this mistake? How will you clean up the kitchen and all of the flour and the milk, right? How will you make your sister not mad that you took her candy, right? What will you do to earn my trust that you're not going to steal the car at night again? These are all a choice, right? Again, it's about empowering our child, right? It's about letting them have independence and agency over their life. That's what this is all about. We want them to be independent. We're not here to control them. It's easier in the short term, but we do not want to be doing this forever. We definitely don't want to be paying for it. So the sooner we could get them to be independent, woohoo, cha-ching, right? So just to review, looking at this from like a big picture, zooming out, we recognize that like a lot of times what's going on is us, right? We need to learn how to regulate ourselves so that we could be the adult in the room. It's awkward. Sometimes it's awkward. I know that when I'm not calm, I'm definitely not my best self. And I'm definitely not my best version of being a parent or a role model. And I want to be. I want to be a role model. I want to be the best parent I can be. I want to be the best educator I can be. I want to be the best human being I can be. And it's harder for me to be that way when I'm not regulated. So recognizing that it really is an us thing, that it's about us calming ourselves down is not only like an achrayus, a responsibility, but it's also liberating and empowering. Because when we recognize that all I need to do is just calm myself down so that I could then think properly. Because it's not about knowing all the techniques and all the things, the exact way to say it, right? Sometimes you're not going to say it right. Sometimes you're not going to do it right. But what we could do is feel right. And that's it, because we have control of our body. That's it, right? It's our body, our choice. We're in charge of what's happening inside us. And we really want to be role modeling for our kids and our students that it's about taking responsibility for ourselves. And that starts inside. And not only that, it's like responsibility with benefits. Because now when I'm taking responsibility for myself, I'm now much more calm. I'm actually able to have like, my brain back online. I can actually think of a solution. We could do this collaborative candor together. It could be kind of awesome. We could work something out instead of me just yelling my head off and feeling really gross about myself the next day. When we recognize that it's like an us thing, it's us not understanding what's going on inside them. It's us not feeling mature enough, it's us not feeling adequate enough, then it allows us to be able to be there for our kiddos. It allows us to be there for our students. It really comes down to that, right? Just recognizing that it's really us, and it all begins and ends with us. And it's really empowering because like it means you don't need to know everything. You don't need to read every parenting book. You just need to know how to calm ourselves down. That's it. This one, I think the next one is just self-explanatory, right? We're in charge of our brain and our body. And we really want to help our child be in charge of their own body and their own brain. And that's really what we're here to do, is to help them do that, to scaffold the skills so that they can do that. Yay, story time. So this is a story that I'm hoping will put me in a good light and showcase a little bit of the concepts that we just discussed, right? Which is, I have a nightly PEP score. The PEP score is how I sit down every night. It's on a little like laminated card, and I have like those dry erase markers. And every night I do this. And the question is, what is it and why? So the answer is, it all starts with a story. It was a Sheva Brachos on Friday night, and one of the later Friday nights. It could have been the earlier ones because those also feel late. But I was sitting at the table, and my oldest daughter was telling me something, and she looks at me and goes, "Daddy, are you listening?" "What?" "Yeah, of course." "Your eyes look bored." Yeah, ouch, that hurt. She was right. I was bored and I was kind of spacing out, and I was busted. Totally busted. So that Saturday night, which is when I always plan my week, I sat down and was like, let me deal with this, right? This is a me issue, not a her issue, right? So let me deal with this. And I sat there and I kind of recognized, okay, so what's getting in my way? See, it works for adults also, right? What's getting in my way? And I realized that like sometimes if I don't know if there's an end to the conversation, I kind of zone out. Sometimes I also don't know what to say. I'm not an expert in unicorns, so it's kind of hard for me to have an opinion on the matter. And so I feel ambiguous about it, and then I kind of check out. That's just me. So I was like, okay, now that I figured out what's wrong, what could I do about this? And I realized, okay, so what I need to do is kind of keep it like time bound. Okay, so yeah, I could listen to this. I could do this. I have 2 more minutes. Let me hear what happened. Right. And I try to ask questions to be involved. I want to be curious. I do actually want to understand about unicorns so that I could actually now have an informed opinion. Right. And so for that one, I call that being present and engaged. So it's PEP. The last P is when I found myself always yelling at my kid. The same thing I told you not to do, which was I kept telling my son, right, don't do this, don't do that. I guess I was used to the fact that I had 2 girls first, and they were a lot more just like calm and yummy and awesome. And then all of a sudden I had a boy, and he's not a girl. So I found myself being a lot more critical, a lot more like, don't do that, don't jump on her, right? Or you can't squish the baby like that. And I was like, okay, like this is not the father I want to be. This is not the home I want to have. And this is definitely not light and playful. So I have a positive score. How positive was I with my children? My PEP, right? Present, engaged, and positive. And every night I rate myself. Recently, by the way, I just got a 10. I think it was last night. I gave myself a 10, so I'm feeling pretty good about myself. That was pretty awesome. All the other nights, it was like an average between 5 and 7, so I'm really celebrating that 10. Really felt really awesome. And I hope that was helpful, right? Again, I'm not saying that you should sit down and make a little like laminated card for yourself and rate yourself every night. I know I'm pretty intense. But the idea is to do something that allows us to feel some aspect of control, that allows us to create some aspect of calm for ourselves so that we could feel like we are being the best version of ourselves for our kiddos. And that's all, folks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Felt, for sharing all that real parenting talk and just being so self-reflective. So really, really appreciate that. And now we're going to turn it over to Lisa. There are a number of questions that have been coming in the chat and the Q&A. If I could just ask, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A. Excuse me. And after after Lisa has spoken, then we're going to get into the Q&A section of tonight.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you, Dr. Felt. That was amazing. As a parent, I always find it validating to listen to a professional share things that I've struggled with in my 20-something years of parenting a child with ADHD. And, I am also a professional in my, daytime hours, but sometimes that doesn't translate over to nighttime hours. And it took me, for me personally, it was a little bit of a struggle when my daughter was first diagnosed as a teenager, to be able to really come to grips with, okay, now I have to take this professional side of me and turn it into being a better mother. And I used to joke with my mother that she didn't waste money on my tuition for graduate school because I was a way better psychologist than I was a parent. But at this point, I think, as you said, I was able to control my own feelings and control my anger in a lot of situations. And some of the things that really resonated with me is that when you said that as a parent, we have to be good role models, and we're not always, and we need to do that well, and we need to do that better, and we need to be able to say to our children, I love you no matter what. The first thing is, I love you. Yes, I got 7 phone calls from school today, and some of them were a little ridiculous, but I'm not going to let that hurt my relationship with you. And I can say for myself as a parent a lot, there was a year that was really, really tough for me as a parent when I was getting phone calls a lot. And there was a point where those dreaded phone calls all day at work when I was actually trying to do my job and then come home to have to deal with my child and whatever went on in the school that day, I was getting very resentful of my daughter. And what you shared about remembering that the child's brain is different and her time management skills and how she definitely things different than my other kids, really, I had to put myself into a lot. I had to change my perspective and change the way I was thinking about her and change the way of you. I mean, you said it. This kid is not here to make my life miserable. She's actually, I would say at this stage in my life, probably of my 3 kids, the one I am closest with. She's the one that gives me a hug every single day and tells me she loves me every time she hangs up the phone. So at 16, I would not say that was even a thought in my head because that was just not something that I could even imagine. And there were definitely moments where the school said to me, oh, you're enabling her, you're giving in to her. And I think one of the things that struck me what you said is you have to do what is right for you and your family. For any of you that heard the webinar that I gave with Dr. Namdar a few months ago, I said one of the things that we struggled with a lot was getting my daughter out of the house in the morning. And we could not, she just wasn't moving. And we had started her on medication. And, a half hour, 45 minutes after that medication hit, she was moving and she was doing, and she was dressed and she was out the door. It was literally 7 minutes and she was gone, but we couldn't get her out. And there was a lot of yelling. I will admit there was a lot of yelling going on in the house. There was a lot of stress. There was just, the other kids weren't getting what they need. And my 17-year-old at the time said, Mommy, this is ridiculous. Just bring her breakfast in bed, give her medicine. She will get up, she will move. And I remember sharing this with somebody in the school, and they said, "You're enabling her." And I said, "I'm okay with that. Because in this moment, I need to enable her." So your words of what is in the way, that was in her way. She could not start her day. And then what was happening? Her day was miserable because mommy was yelling. She almost missed the bus. She didn't get in my car, blah, blah, whatever, how we were getting to school. And it was just so stressful that by the time she got to the front door of school, she was here when she shouldn't have been. And just by doing that thing, we just took the whole pressure down in our home. And yes, I enabled her. I will admit that. And I'm still okay with it. Not every once in a while when she'll scream, "Mommy, bring me breakfast," because, she's a little too much of an adult for that now. But at the time, it really worked. And there are going to be things that you need to do in your home to make your life easier, and do it. Give yourself the permission to say, this is okay. And yes, scaffold and teach, and then say, this is, we didn't do it on vacation days, and we didn't do it, you know, we did it when we were actually on a vacation because we all wanted to get out. But, if we were home for Yontiv, no, or Shabbos, no, nobody was bringing her breakfast in bed. She knew she had to get out. But for school, we needed to do it. And the collaboration was really, started off with my older kid, but we did that a lot in my home of what's not working, what's in your way, as you said that, that's about like what's preventing you from doing your homework, from remembering to bring your books home. What reminders do you need? And this is a wonderful thing. Oh, you can't. Here's mine. These things. There are phones. There are alerts. There are reminders. When we were kids. Well, me, I'll speak for myself. When I was a kid, I didn't have a phone with me, so I didn't have a calendar alert that said, "Bring home your notebook." But we have them now. They're amazing accommodations for kids. Use them. Figure out what works for your child and what is necessary for your child, and use it and do, And so, and when you're collaborating with the teachers, it's one of the things that I think, Dr. Felt and I spoke about last week. When you're collaborating with the teachers, it is as a parent, and I've been a teacher, so I could say it on both ends. It's my job to help you. It's my job to partner with you. But when my kid is in school with you all day, it is not my job to discipline her. It is not my job. It is my job to figure out what's in her way and help you with it. But I remember as a parent being told, "I will beat your child's learning disability out of her with my tough love." I was in the principal's office probably within 7 minutes of that conversation, because I knew that teacher was never going to be somebody my child performed for. And so be an advocate for your kid. You know your child best. You will always be the best advocate. And, in years in the same school with my kids, I learned the hard way of when to pick the battles and what to pick. And I'm sure you've all done that in your own lifetimes. But, when it's something that you cannot stand for, don't. And I actually pulled my kid out of that teacher's class because I knew there was no way anyone was beating her learning disability out of her with tough love. So be your child's advocate as much as your role model, because being their advocate teaches them that you're a safe space for them and that they can come share with you whatever they need to share with you. And that has worked sometimes too much. Like, I know way more things than I probably want to know. You said, you gave an example of being out at night. Yeah, there are definitely things I don't want to know my child is doing, but she's confident enough in our relationship to be able to share those things with me, because as a younger kid, she knew I was going to have her back and talk out whatever those issues were. So Dr. Namdar, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. And we had a parent that just commented, thank you, Lisa, for sharing that with us. But what you did is called accommodation, not enabling. And I
agree.
I highly support that. So we've got tons of questions piling into the Q&A. And I'm going to start with the first question that we've got. And I'm going to address it to Lisa. Lisa, how do you manage when you're a type A personality parent and your child is exactly the opposite?
That is definitely something I struggle with every single day. I am probably one of the biggest type A personalities around. There are definitely some of my colleagues on this webinar who are probably cracking up. I am definitely a type A personality. My child is definitely not. Part of it is reframing and remembering that we think differently. And that is, I would say, the biggest thing that has helped me through and has kept our relationship intact, because that's probably the most important thing, is reminding me that she is a valuable person in herself and she doesn't have to be me. And she doesn't have to be her big sister and she doesn't have to be her little sister. She just has to be her. And you're going to have to make peace with that. It took me a little bit of a time, like to say, like, I have never lost a pair of shoes. I have never broken my glasses in school. I have gotten millions of phone calls. I don't understand how her shoelaces broke 7 times in the middle of school in 1 year, and yet it happened. And as Dr. Felt said, you take a deep breath and you say, I love this child. We're gonna move on, and we're gonna be the best parent for her, even if that's not me. It's not easy. I promise you, it is not.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Felt, we have many, many questions coming in, so we're going to try to get to as many as we can. Apologies if we do not get to your questions, but I'll try and group some of them together by themes because many of them have a lot in common. Okay, Dr. Felt, how do we get other family members on board with how to talk to our children, especially those who don't have patience with our child who has ADHD?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That is a great question. It's in a way almost probably very similar to the same way we have to deal with ourselves, right? Which is number one, allowing that child or teaching that child, empowering that child to create their own calm. Certain, either you could do it with that clarity of like, yeah, this kid is annoying. Their brain is kind of difficult and different and does make it annoying for those people around them. Even that validation, again, how you want to say it is totally up to you. But the point is that calming clarity of recognizing that it's this is really about you and how you deal with your sibling with ADHD, and it's not about them. You're not you. You're always going to have this in life where there's just an annoying coworker. Right? Again, I wouldn't give that whole lecture to a 4-year-old, right? But the idea is that this is a you thing. How can I help you? What's in your way? Like what's making it hard for you to deal with this kid? Right. And then the next one is collaborative candor. Like it's really working with the child. All right, what can we do? Let's do something together, right? If you're just getting so frustrated, you just want to scream and rip his head off, right? What can we do? Can we make a signal with each other? Can we have a little thing that we do? Like, how could I help you? What's in your way, right? How can I be there for you to help scaffold your skills and help your ability? Because the end of the day is none of us are going to be able to change this kid. Usually the medication's worn off by the time they're back home, so that ain't gonna help either. So like we're kind of on our own. What could we do together? How could we support each other? Let's do this. How could we make this work?
If I could add to that, sometimes
Sure.
also like parents or grandparents might not understand, and especially old school grandparents, like
Yeah,
just slap her. She'll stop, That doesn't work. And so I would say a lot of it is also protecting your child and having her back or his back and saying, I know this is a little, I know she's a little frustrating. And also saying to the kid, maybe grandpa doesn't understand. You know, ADHD wasn't a thing when he was a kid, you know?
right,
So I always say, like, make sure your kid knows that you're there for her.
Yeah,
right.
which really like I like that how you brought that out because it really highlights the importance of the third step, right? Of that care, the courage and the care, right? Sometimes it's about empowering that child to have the courage to set their own boundaries.
Right.
They don't have to be the pushover who always gets their stuff taken away. Help them, right? And show care and warmth for both of them, right? This understanding and love and appreciation for the ADHD child and a love and understanding and appreciation for the non-ADHD child, right? And it's sometimes, yeah, it will come down to not only ourselves having the courage, but empowering our child to have the courage to put up with the other one.
And also establish boundaries, I'm assuming.
It's courage
Yeah,
to establish boundaries. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So we have another question here. As a parent with 3 teenage children and a wife with ADHD, how do we best handle a lot of impulsivity by everyone around us and not yell? Okay, everybody is medicated, which does help tremendously. This is what is mentioned in this question. But the question is, you're a parent with 3 teenage children and a wife with ADHD. How do you best handle the impulsivity around you?
Alcohol.
Okay, all right.
Patience.
It's
Patience.
whatever allows you to create that calm and a safe space. Really, you need something I call SOS, right? A certain like sanctuary of self. Being able to find something, for some people, it's a man cave. For some people, I've heard this great story about someone who has a wife whose executive functioning challenges makes it very hard to have a neat home. So he has his linen cabinet where everything's perfectly crisp, folded so neatly, color coded. And when the house is just too crazy, he opens it up and goes, "Ah." That's his little sanctuary. Sometimes it could be a physical one, sometimes it could be an emotional one, whatever works. But the idea is to allow yourself to do whatever you can to help yourself create calm, to help yourself be able to have some collaborative candor with your wife or with your children, especially if they already have a brain. So like by the time they're teenage and adult, there's something to work with. So having that, and then yes, having that same courage and care to be like, hey, listen, I love you and I don't want to be just constantly resentful and angry at you. So what can we do to make this work? Right. And obviously not on everything, but like to pick your battles and do what you can and do that from a place of calm. So after you've had your alcohol or your linen cabinet or wherever you have your safe space man cave thing, it's being able to have that conversation from your best place, right? From a place of calm and clarity to create that clarity for how to deal with it. But yes, you definitely need to take care of yourself, and that's probably numero uno, the first and most important thing. Take care of you.
Okay, so I have another question here. What happens when a parent has ADHD and cannot regulate their own emotions in dealing with children that have ADHD and children that don't have ADHD? We know that it can often run in families, and this is a question that's come up a few times here on this webinar.
The reason why I laughed is because that's me, and this presentation's for me. It's for people like me who also need to learn how to regulate ourselves. You'll notice that's why the first rule of what to feel is creating calm. That's why I need to woosah all the time and take that deep breath. Yeah, it's tough. There's no easy way out. I would say definitely look into therapy, medication, coaching, whatever can help you be the best you. This is your opportunity to role model for these kiddos and to empower them by strengthening yourself so that you could almost like the cup that spilleth over, right? Like we could only give as much as we've got. And so allowing ourselves to use this as an opportunity to grow and be our best ADHD self then allows that spillover for them. And guess what? They're going to get the message, which is that mommy or daddy is a work in progress. Isn't that a beautiful, empowering thing? Just like, hey, mommy and daddy's also working on themselves.
Right, right. Surreal. Lisa, I have a question for you. Through all the disciplining and the navigating challenges, and a lot of what comes with raising a child with ADHD, how do we still build connection outside the working on stuff?
It's a great question. First of all, find the expertise in your child. Find the things she's good at. I think Rick Lavoie in his in some of his series talks about finding that thing your child is good at and just build it up over and over and over again. Build your child's self-esteem. So if for my child's an artist, we have encouraged that the artwork, the arts and crafts, the drawing, we encourage that tons because she should feel good about something. And I don't have to be disciplining her about it. It's something that it's just she enjoys. We also do things together. I'll take her to the mall. I'll take her for ice cream. I do with all my kids, but with her, it was even more important because I've spent a lot of my life of, did you bring home your notebook? Did you do your homework? Are you sure? You sure you started that book report? Because it's due in 2 days. I've plenty of time. Right? I'm sure everybody has heard that. But because you're disciplining, or I don't even want to use the discipline, you're just reminding a lot. Number one, try to find other ways to remind. So we use the phone a lot as reminders so that it's not mommy's voice constantly reminding her of things. But also do fun stuff with your kid so that you appreciate them for who they are and they don't always look at you as the nag.
Right. Thank
Jump in.
you.
Parent.
What?
Should I answer also as a parent?
Of course.
Lisa, when you said that, it made me so happy because I have a date night with each kid, and during those dates, we try to do stuff that my kids enjoy. And one of my kids is an artist, and we're drawing like a series together, and that made me happy to be like, oh yay, I'm doing what Lisa's saying, yay. And each kid we get to do something that really makes them happy. And I love that you said build up their self-esteem by doing things that make them feel good about themselves. Like, think about it. We're supposed to be their greatest fan, coach, best friend. Like, who else will be?
Right. Right. We hear about these building islands of competence for kids. I think, if we're not going to be the ones to shine a light on those things, then who will be, right? So, thank you for that. We're getting a lot of questions here that are individual scenarios that people are dealing with. I would encourage everybody, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we are going to be sending out an email after this webinar with an Ask the Expert session opportunity for parents to sign up for a 15-minute consult with Dr. Felt. If you have something like a particular scenario or situation you would like to seek advice on or seek help for, I encourage you to book one of those slots. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all of those scenarios tonight just because of the number of questions that are coming in. We have a question here. How do we react to our ADHD child, our child who has ADHD? I prefer to use that label, constantly bothering siblings once their medication wears off.
Who's that one too? Because Lisa, you could answer that.
It's not easy. I mean, in our family, when we're seeing those meds wear off and I can see when it's starting to plummet, I encourage, alone time in each other's rooms and to try not to be in their faces with you. And when they were younger, even more so. That's quiet time play for us back then because I could see she was getting into people's faces. And you know, unfortunately, there have definitely been times in our home where somebody said, her ADHD is coming out. And then we could all laugh about it. Now that everybody's more of a young adult here, they really can laugh about it and they'll say things like, remember when you did this to me? Remember when you did that to me? And I just will say that they are still best friends, which is they've grown up to really be best friends. But for us, it was always better to keep them in opposite ends of the house when meds were starting to wear off and some not so pleasant behaviors were coming out.
Yeah, the wind down is really hard. The first step is to obviously create calm for ourselves, which is okay. I mean, as long as no one's dying or getting murdered, that's a good place to start, right? I've had cases of that though. The real important thing to do next is that collaborative, like just working with the kid. Hey, listen, like again, not asking the kid once the medicine's off, but when the medicine's still in. Hey, what can we do when that medication is winding down? Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to take individual time? In our family, we call it individual time, right? Do you want to go take that individual time, right? Because Lisa's suggestion is brilliant, right? Just like do your thing, go hide in the cave, do whatever you have to do. Do you want to get a booster, like a little tiny, like a half dose or something really small to just kind of, help you get through that second half of the day? Do you want something that's more of a downer, right? Something that will kind of calm you down and get you like more sleepy? Do you want a ritual, a routine, right? Like a shower, a hot shower, or like a playtime, a reading thing. Again, depending on the age and stage. But really, I think those two are the most important place to start, is that creating calm for ourselves and then being as collaborative as we can.
Yeah, I think also helping children recognize their triggers and really getting them to own when they're sensing the change within themselves and that, empowering them with, here are the things that I can do, right? And like to really take ownership is something that could be really helpful. Somebody just posted a question. I'm wondering if it's possible to mitigate the negativity that often comes with the ADHD label. I love this, can we avoid the label altogether? And somebody is when we talk about stigma, we talk about, we don't talk about a depressed person. We talk about a person who has depression, right? Like a person may have a diagnosis, a person may have something that challenges them, but that is not their entire identity. And you hear so much about children facing that. Can any of you comment on that?
I think like in our home, it's not a negativity. And we really just work on this. You think like this, I think like this, you act like that. Our brains work a little differently, and that's okay. And for me, and this is something even on in my professional life, when we talk about a diagnosis, we talk about the only way to remove the stigma is to have confidence in who you are and to be able to say, I actually did a group today with some people with mental illness talking about, um, yeah, this person has depression, this person has bipolar, and they own it and they're comfortable with who they are. And years ago, my daughter said to a teacher once, I can't do what you're asking. I have an IEP for a reason. And the teacher had to walk out of the room because she was laughing her head off. She actually was a friend of my, our family. She called me afterwards and she said, I was so proud of her because she was able to really advocate for herself. I'd say we've never put it as something that stigmatized her. So for her, she's proud of herself. And she knows she thinks differently and she knows it makes her unique and fun and entertaining. And I think that's the only way to do it for the kid not to see it as a negative.
Right,
Well,
right.
I have nothing to add. That was so perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to ask one last question. As a teacher in the classroom, this webinar has been for teachers and parents, and I think this is helpful for both to hear. As an educator in the classroom, what are some tips to help keep students who might fit into this ADHD category on task and to ensure they're really using their class time opportunities to the maximum?
Great question. I would even say PEP. Being present with them, engage them, get them engaged, and being positive. It's the same thing I would do with my own kiddos at home. They need to be engaged. It's something that Dr. Bill Dotson calls the interest-based nervous system, where interest turns on the executive functioning in our brain and it makes their brain come alive. And all of a sudden you'll see in brain scans that when they're interested, it's so much more colorful and alive. Make your lessons interesting, make them exciting, make them interactive. Or if that's way too much work for you, which I get it, I was a Rebbe for 3 years, it's really tough. Make it interactive for that kid, right? Let that kid be the one who brings stuff and hands out things and is doing things that are interactive and engaging and allows the kid to feel like they're a positive contributing part of the class.
I want to
Yeah.
add to that just quickly is make the kid feel that they are loved, so that they have a reason to work for you. If they feel that every single thing they're going to do is met with something with negativity, they're going to shut down. So I have seen over the years, my kid will work for any teacher or any boss now that gives her positive attention and positive feedback. So treat that kid like you would treat your own child or every other kid in the room, and they will work for you even with some of their difficulties and their struggles.
I think also praising the process, right? Like really encouraging the effort and what it takes for that particular child might be so much more difficult for that child than another child. And I've heard so much, Dr. Felt, about, the challenge itself being when you keep things interesting, keep them on their toes, that in and of itself is the stimulant that keeps them engaged. So
CNU's speech, it's quick, which is our brain, right, gets turned on by interest. And what's really cool is to look at marketing, right? These are people who their bread and butter comes from getting us interested. So if you look at the active ingredients of marketing, you'll notice there's 4 themes. Everything is, this is what I call the CNUs, ready? Is either challenging or competitive, right? Collect all 6. Right? It's new or novel, right? Literally new or under new management. Like my best example is Sprite. I still prefer the green bottle, but no, now it's clear. Right? It's the same like sugary, sweet grossness, right? But like it's new, it's different, right? That's CN, and then U is urgency. I think that's like self-evident. Like everything gets done in the last minute. Call now. right? So like that kind of thing. And then stimulating, right? You ever notice all those convenience stores that have the million lights that are going around in different rainbow colors, right? Like just take it from marketing. Hey, it works. It gets our money every year, especially now, holiday season, right? I'm a sucker for this stuff, right? So like think about it. If we could take the active ingredients of marketing and use them in the education classroom, you're unstoppable. So again, the CNUs are making life or class challenging or competitive, new or novel. The difference between new and novel is new is where it's actually new, and novel is just like it's just in a different way, like steak, same old thing, but just in a different way. Urgent, right? Making everything time bound, or we have 3 minutes to complete this assignment, right? Having a like timing things, just making for no good reason other than just to create urgency. All right. And then stimulating, right? Bright colors, make it exciting, different, a random picture of a dog or a unicorn. I don't know, whatever it is, just like platypus.
Right. Sounds great. Okay. All right. An email is going to be going out to everybody tomorrow with a link to the Ask the Expert sign up if you'd like to meet and have that 15-minute consultation with Dr. Felt. We have so many questions here. I hope that we were able to answer quite a few of them, and apologies if we weren't able to get to all of them. But it definitely makes us think more about hosting potentially a part 2 down the line. I want to thank our incredible panelists here tonight, Lisa, Nachi. I want to thank Adiva for all of her work in helping us bring these programs to you. And stay tuned for our next event, February 18th. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight and being the best supporter for your child. All the best, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.